Hey everybody, Elizabeth here from Total Wellness Health Coaching. Welcome to my kitchen. So the last video, at least I think the last video that went up for you to see was an introduction to gluten-free sourdough and just kind of how that process is working, some things that I've made with it. And in that video I showed you scones. And I would say up until last week, hold on for this, up until last week the best thing, the favorite thing that I have been making with this sourdough starter has been scones. And I have made lemon blueberry, I've made cinnamon, and cranberry orange. And today we're going to do cranberry orange. That was the vote. I asked my eaters what they wanted. Now since then, I have found an even better recipe, and you're just going to have to come back next week for that because it is the best of this category of food. I'm not going to tell you. It has to be a surprise. My dishwasher's not happy that I stopped it mid-cycle. I have been making this particular food for years and years, paleo, gluten-free, trying to kind of hit the best version, and I have finally found it. And so I'm super, super excited to share that one with you, and it's easy as well. And this is also easy. It's like a regular quick bread type recipe, except we use our sourdough starter, which is fermented, and so you get all those good probiotics from fermented foods. And if you want to know more about the benefits of fermentation, you can find that when you go to this recipe, there will be a note or a link to some additional information about fermentation, sourdough, that sort of thing. But today I'm just going to show you how to make these scones. So like I said, we're making cranberry orange again. Like a typical quick bread, we have a dry and a wet. So my wet is right here, and what's in my bowl already is my sourdough starter that's fed and active and alive. Okay, so I have a half a cup of starter. I'm going to add a half a cup of oil. I prefer avocado oil. You could use coconut oil. I don't like it in things like this, but if that's all you have, then that's fine. You could use palm shortening, but I really think the avocado oil is the healthiest and is going to work the best in this recipe. And it's not hard to find anymore. So that big bottle comes from Costco. But you can also find it at Thrive Market and other places like that. So I have a cup of starter, a half a cup of oil, and then I need a half a cup of liquid. And since I'm making cranberry orange, I'm going to use orange juice for part of my liquid. So same thing when I made the lemon blueberry, I used lemon juice for my liquid, part of my liquid. So, sorry about that. With citrus, orange, lemon, goodness, you could do grapefruit. Grapefruit flavor doesn't come through as well, but you could certainly do it. In a pinch, when I've been out of oranges, I've used clementines, and that works fine too. Lime, whatever. Zest it first, because that just makes it easier on yourself than trying to zest already a juiced piece of fruit. So the zest goes in with the dry because it distributes better that way. So I'm just going to juice it. And it just depends on the particular piece of fruit. It might have a half a cup of juice, and if it does, that's all of the additional liquid I'll need to add. But if it's not quite a half a cup, I'll add some almond milk. And again, you could use whatever milk you are using these days. I'm going to keep these dairy-free, so I will use almond milk if I need to supplement. Gosh, sorry about the beeping. My dishwasher very kindly did the dishes for me, got the kitchen ready, and saw that the dishwasher needed to be run, which was awesome, but forgot that I was going to be videoing. So it's going to occasionally beep because I stopped it mid-cycle and it doesn't like that. So that is just around 1/3 of a cup. So I'm just going to top it off with this almond milk to get to a half a cup of liquid. We'll set that back there. So that's my liquid. It doesn't really have to be stirred together. It's going to get all mixed in, but just in case you accidentally got a seed out of your orange or your lemon or something, it'll be easier to fish it out of this small volume. Okay, so you saw me put the orange zest we need a half a cup of dried fruit, or about. You could put in a lot, you could put in a little, it doesn't really matter. If you get too much, it gets to be so that it kind of falls out of your mixture. Like, have you ever made chocolate chip cookies and said, oh, I don't want to just use a half a cup of chocolate chips or whatever the recipe called for. I want to use more, and then you have chocolate chips just falling out of your cookie dough, which some people would say is not a problem, but then it actually, they won't bake quite as well. So you don't want to use too many. So that was arrowroot. I'm mixing up all my dry. So if you kind of coat your cranberries and your orange zest and stuff with your flowers, it will help them to stay distributed throughout your product really well. So I needed a cup of arrowroot. Now my hand is really dirty, so I'm going to give my hand a rinse. I need a half a cup of maple sugar. Again, you can use a different type of sugar. If you want to use brown sugar, I'm not going to tell you what to do because it's your house and your body and your groceries, but just regular cane sugar and brown sugar are pretty inflammatory for your body, so I try to use a more natural version. I went 3 cups of almond flour. So 3, sorry, I gotta count. 4, 5, 6. So the maple sugar just tastes amazing. And I didn't want the extra liquid of honey or maple syrup. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. But if that's all you had, maple syrup or honey, you could certainly do that. Just look at the consistency of the dough that I get and know that you're looking for that consistency, and maybe add a little bit less liquid. Yeah, a little bit less liquid here because you'll be using a liquid sweetener. So it's 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, the maple sugar, that's everything. So just get this all mixed together really well. It smells so good because of the orange zest. I know the cranberry orange is kind of a wintry flavor. Lemon blueberry is kind of springy, but whatever, you know. We just make whatever tastes good, whatever we have. And actually I was at Aldi, I guess a couple weeks ago, and they had gotten in a fresh shipment of oranges, and they just looked really good. Like, well, I'll buy oranges. Okay, so then all I'm going to do is add my liquid, which remember was the orange juice, avocado oil, the sourdough starter. Did I say orange juice? And a little bit of almond milk. So a quick bread, they usually tell you just be real careful, be real gentle with it. You don't want to develop the gluten. You want it to be, you know, tender, like a piece of cake, really. But recall that we're gluten-free over here. These are gluten-free scones made with gluten-free sourdough, so there's no gluten to be developed. But at the same time, you don't need to be crazy and beat it to death. Just kind of gently folding it in, making sure the flour has all been mixed in. Yeah. Okay, so I kind of consolidate my mixture into a pile because I'm going to split it in half. So you can see how thick this is. I mean, it held its shape enough for me to pull it out of there. So scones, I usually make into triangles. I think in England, Great Britain, they are traditionally round like our biscuits. But in the US, if you see a recipe, it's typically like this. You sort of pat your dough out into a circle, and then you'll cut it into triangles. I like them, I mean, these, so here, let me show you this. So there's a little bit of flour on that cranberry. I'm just going to kind of pick him out and put him back in. So we've mixed up that flour. This cranberry is kind of sticking out on the edge, which means it might burn. a little, so I just kind of tucked him in. So that's about 3/4 of an inch thick. I got that one a little close to the edge. So the sourdough starter is leavening. We added baking powder to these as well. You'll find that with sourdough recipes, sometimes the sourdough is the only rising agent, and sometimes the recipe might actually call for yeast in addition to the sourdough, or in this case, baking powder. So it just kind of depends. Don't think that your recipe is wrong, or there's, you know, your sourdough is not doing its thing. It is. It's just this particular recipe needs a little extra. So we've added the baking powder. And that's it. And so at this point, I'm going to cover this and put it in the refrigerator and just let it rest for a little bit, and then I will bake them off. I'm just going to take another piece of parchment and just lay it on top and stick this whole thing in the fridge. Hey there, everybody. Okay, my dishwasher has finished doing its thing, making all of its noise. My scones have been resting in the fridge for about an hour, and I hope you can see this is not perfect. I'm not ever aiming for perfection around here. So you can if you want to, but it's so not necessary. This one's a little thicker, this one's a little thinner. In fact, confession, I put these in my inside fridge, which is a side-by-side, and so this tray didn't really fit particularly well, and I opened the door to get something else out, and the whole thing just fell out on the floor. But I had the piece of parchment on top, and so it was all kind of contained, but it got all squished up. So I just pressed them back out again, and it's fine. Okay, so my oven is preheated to 375. Now, I like to use this bench scraper because it's just, I mean, it's stainless steel, it's hard. It's not sharp like it's going to cut me, but it's sharp enough to cut this dough. And I go ahead and I cut each circle in half, and then I cut it in half the other way. And then I do diagonal, so I end up with 8 scones. It's going to stick a little bit. You can, between each cut, you can run your bench scraper under cold water, or you can dust it with a little arrowroot or some kind of flour, but it just doesn't bother me that it is sticking a little bit. And I'll just wipe this off. I'll just stick it on there, and it's fine. Now, this is a bonus step you absolutely don't have to do, but I like to do it because it's pretty. It gives them a nice little shiny top. This is just heavy cream. It's actual cow's milk cream, which I said I was making these dairy-free, and they are completely dairy-free except for this little piece. But it's fine for my family, so if you can't have any dairy, then you can skip this, or you could use coconut cream. Like an almond milk, those are usually too thin. And honestly, I haven't used too many of the other alternative milks, so there might be another one that would work okay. But off the top of my head, I would think coconut milk would be good because it's the fat that you're really wanting that's going to make a nice shiny kind of outer coating is not really the right word, but just like a nice little sheen on top. So usually I just do this whole process with my fingers because it's just easier. Just kind of spread that around. It's not really going to spread or, coat it all in the oven, so you really want to spread the cream. And again, you can totally skip this step. It is not necessary. You could use an egg. You could beat up an egg or even just an egg yolk with a little bit of water and do an egg wash on top instead. I just have the cream in there, and then I'm not wasting a whole bunch of egg. So I do it this way. Then there's one more thing, which again, I would normally skip this step unless you were, say you were making these for like a Mother's Day brunch or a bridal, what do you call those things? Showers, like a bridal shower or a baby shower, something like that, where you would want these to look a little fancier. I sprinkle with some of this sparkling sugar. It's not necessary to make them sweet enough for my family. They do not need them to look fancy. but I'm just doing it to show you what you can do. This sparkling sugar comes in lots of different colors. So if you were doing like a baby shower, you could do pink sugar or blue sugar. If you didn't know, yellow sugar, whatever. I just have the white because I didn't want the dye. This is India Tree brand, and I'll link it if I can find it. In fact, I think I may have ordered this from Amazon, but I'll link it. Again, it's not necessary for the taste or the final product or anything. It's simply to make them look extra pretty. And then they go in the oven for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I pull them out. I'll have washed my bench scraper, and I'll use that again to separate them all and then bake them for a few more minutes. So in the oven we go. Okay, back in 20 minutes. Okay, look how pretty. You probably can't tell from this distance, maybe from the overhead shot. You can see a little bit that they have just a nice, pretty little shine to them. So again, I'm just cutting where I cut before, but now they're set enough that I can actually separate them without them coming apart. The dough was a little too tender for that before baking it all. I know it looks like I'm kind of struggling to cut through them a little bit. That's just where the cranberries are. This bench scraper is just super useful for this kind of application. If you don't have one, I'll link it again below, and I recommend you get one. They're not expensive and super useful for so many things. Okay, so now they all have a little space. So that they can finish baking completely, and we're going to do about 7 to 8 more minutes. Okay, everybody, so the scones are out of the oven. 20 minutes, I separated them as I showed you. 7 minutes more. Actually, I did do an extra minute, so 8 minutes. And here we have our scones. They've been out for a few minutes. I started dinner, so if you hear something sizzling in the background, that's our dinner tonight. So that's why I can touch the pan. So they're just a beautiful golden brown on the bottom, just a little like slightly shiny top, and beautiful flaky texture inside. These have, I already ate one, or I would eat another one. Just like a good scone should be. It's like a little bit dense, but a little bit flaky, and they just have the best texture and flavor, and they don't taste sour at all. Remember, there was just a half a cup of the sourdough starter. So don't be afraid of that if you want to feed these to your kids or something. And they're just a nice decadent treat. Again, they're not gluten-free. They are gluten-free. They're not paleo because my sourdough starter, it's not paleo, it's gluten-free. So there are gluten-free grains that I'm using to feed my starter. So there are some grains involved in that, but again, because it's sourdough, they're fermented, so they have been broken down to the point that they're more easily digestible. So if you're maybe like in between, like you've been paleo for a long time and you're trying to introduce some gluten-free grains, but maybe you're hesitant or you've had a little bit of trouble with just traditional grains, going with the sourdough would be a good sort of interim step to try. And again, I mean, here I have a lot of scones here with just a half a cup of that starter, and then the rest of the flour, it was, you know, my regular paleo ingredients, the almond flour and the arrowroot, so totally grain-free. So I'm hoping that this will be something you would be able to incorporate into your diet if you're at that place where you can start to add a little bit of grains in, or if maybe you're trying to do some fermented foods and are having a little trouble digesting those. Again, it's kind of like a baby step with fermentation before you skip all the way to sauerkraut or something like that. These are delicious when they're fresh. Right out of the oven, you're going to be beating people away. They're going to want to come eat all of them. But if you'd like to actually have these for breakfast and snacks throughout the week, you're going to need to whisk them away and hide them. I store them in the refrigerator. They last great in a sealed container for about a week. And I think they're best, the texture will be best if you will heat them up a little bit. So if you have a toaster oven, or it's winter and you don't mind heating up your oven, you want to pop them in the oven, we will put them in the microwave for about 20 seconds. Just, however, they're better if you warm them up a little bit. And again, we made orange cranberry. I've made lemon blueberry. I actually have some dried cherries. I'm going to do almond cherry next time. Cinnamon. In the winter you could do like apple. I don't know why. It's not seasonal, whenever you want. But apple cinnamon would be really good with some dried apples. Anything you want. You can make them totally plain. Actually, I made them savory one night. I put a little bit of cheddar and Parmesan and some fresh chives out of the garden, and we had those with our dinner as like a savory bread, and they were delicious. So this recipe, it'll be linked down below in the notes. You can go to my website, totalwellnesshealthcoaching.com, where you can, find the easily printable version. And if you have any questions, please leave those in the comments. I will be more than happy to help in any way that I can. And again, thank you for watching. As always, if you haven't already, or even if you subscribed a long time ago, you may have been unsubscribed, unbeknownst to you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell, notification, icon, thumbs up, all that stuff. Helps to keep spreading the news that good food can be good for you, and helps our channel to keep growing and lets us help more people. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.